Hello, and welcome to our podcast episode number 95, Graboid Infestation Strikes Again in Mexico. I'm Thomas, and as always, here with me, my friend Timothy. Today, we are going to discuss a film called Tremors 2, Aftershocks. There will be spoilers. Tremors 2. Aftershocks is a 1996 direct-to-video sequel to the comedy horror film Tremors, following Earl Basset and his attempts to deal with Graboid infestations at a Mexican oil field. Well, Timothy, so did you like Tremors 2, Aftershocks?
Well, Thomas, I must say that Tremors 2, Aftershocks was an interesting watch for me. I've never been particularly fond of horror film, but there were moments of humor sprinkled throughout the film that managed to keep my attention.
Oh, really? You found it funny? I thought it was just terrible. It didn't even feel like a proper sequel to Tremors, did it?
Well, it did have some returning characters from the first film, but I can see where you're coming from. But let me ask you something, Tom. What exactly did you dislike about the movie? Was it the storyline, the acting, or
the everything? First of all, they brought back that grumpy old man who was just annoying. And what was up with the whole Mexican oil field setting? It felt like a cheap way to rehash the same old Graboid versus human conflict without actually doing anything new or creative. And don't even get me started on those shriekers. They were just no.
Well, I do agree that some aspects of the film could have been improved upon, but I think it was meant to be a more lighthearted, action-packed sequel rather than a deep dive into character development and plot twists. Besides, I thought the explosions were pretty cool.
Fine. But don't expect me to watch any more of these Tremors films, all right? So, Tim, tell me something you found interesting about Tremors 2. Aftershocks plot?
Well, Thomas, there was one interesting aspect of the plot I'd like to mention. You know how in the first film they introduced us to the idea of shriekers? Well, in Tremors 2, Aftershocks, they actually delve deeper into this concept and explain how these creatures reproduce and multiply so quickly. It's quite fascinating from a scientific point of view. Although I admit that the execution of these ideas might not have been the best, but what really caught my attention was the character development of Earl Basset, initially portrayed as a self-centered, money-hungry individual. He slowly evolves throughout the film to display qualities of bravery and loyalty, especially when it comes to protecting those he cares about. It's kind of a typical arc we've seen before in action horror film, but I thought the actors did a decent job of portraying these changes in character. But overall, Tremors 2, Aftershocks, is just another installment in a franchise that tried to capitalize on the success of its predecessor without really offering anything new or groundbreaking. It's entertaining enough for what it is, mindless popcorn flick fun, but I wouldn't call it a masterpiece of cinematic storytelling now, would I, Tom?
Well, Timmy boy, let me just say that I still stand by my original opinion. But since we're on the topic of character development, how about we talk about Burt played by Michael Gross? He was quite entertaining in his over-the-top macho manly way. Don't you think?
I did find Burt to be a breath of fresh air in this otherwise stale plot. His comedic relief and exaggerated bravado were welcome additions to the otherwise dull proceedings, and his trademark catchphrases like "Give 'em hell, boys," and "Let's kick some Graboid ass" certainly added a touch of humor to the otherwise bleak situation. But overall, Tremors 2, Aftershocks, is just another mediocre sequel trying to recapture the magic of its predecessor. It falls short in many aspects, including storyline acting and originality. It's watchable for fans of the franchise or those looking for a mindless action-packed flick to kill time. But it certainly won't be remembered as one of the greats of horror cinema, will it, Tom?
Well, said Timmy boy. And speaking of interesting behind-the-scenes tidbits, did you know that the production of Tremors 2, Aftershocks faced quite a few challenges? For one, they had to film in some pretty remote locations, including Mexico and Utah's famous Graboid capital, which led to some logistical nightmares. And then there was the weather. They experienced some crazy sandstorms during shooting, which delayed production by almost a whole week. Can you imagine the chaos that caused, Timmy?
I can only imagine, Thomas. But despite these challenges, the film managed to come out, albeit mediocre at best. However, one interesting behind-the-scenes tidbit I did hear was how director S. Wilson reportedly clashed with producer during production over creative differences. It's rumored that some key scenes were even shot without the knowledge or approval of the others, which led to quite a few reshoots and re-edits in post-production.
I knew it. They always say the making is oftentimes more interesting than the final product, and Tremors 2. Aftershocks is a perfect example of that saying, isn't it, Timmy? So tell me, what do you think was the biggest mistake the director and producers made in this film?
Well, Tom, I wouldn't say there was just one big mistake, but rather a combination of things. Firstly, trying to recreate the success of the first film was always going to be tough. Secondly, the plot was somewhat generic and lacked originality. Thirdly, the characters were underdeveloped and didn't evoke any strong emotions from the audience. And lastly, the CG effects, although improved compared to the first film, still have not aged well.
Well, said Timmy boy. But hey, we've spent enough time nitpicking this flick. Let's move on to our next review, shall we? What do you have lined up for us tomorrow? Is it another classic horror film or a modern-day masterpiece waiting to be discovered?
Well, Tom, I'm glad you're eager to move on from Tremors to Aftershocks. We've got a real gem lined up for tomorrow's episode. It's a lesser-known horror flick from the early 2000s that somehow managed to fly under most people's radar. The film is called Crawling Death, and it stars two relatively unknown actors at the time, Sarah Jane Smith and Peter Frampton. Now, let's talk a bit about the plot of Crawling Death. The story revolves around a group of archaeologists who unearth an ancient artifact in the Amazon rainforest. Little do they know that this artifact is actually a portal to a world inhabited by mutated carnivorous arachnids. Think giant spiders on steroids, as you can probably guess. Chaos ensues when these monstrous creatures start crawling their way into our world, seeking food and warmth. What really sets Crawling Death apart from other generic horror flicks is its attention to detail in terms of set design and creature effects. The film was shot entirely on location in the real Amazon rainforest, giving it an added layer of authenticity that many modern-day horror films lack. Additionally, the practical special effects used to bring these monsters to life are incredibly convincing, especially considering this movie was made before CG became the go-to for most Hollywood productions now. Let's talk about the performances in Crawling Death. Sarah Jane Smith brings a sense of vulnerability and strength to her character, Dr. Catherine Roberts, a young and ambitious arachnologist who finds herself thrust into this terrifying situation. Peter Frampton plays Dr. Jackson Burroughs, a seasoned and somewhat grumpy expert in ancient cultures and mythology. Their chemistry on screen is palpable, adding a layer of unexpected romance to the otherwise brutal horrors that unfold. In conclusion, Crawling Death is a hidden gem of a horror film that deserves more recognition than it has received over the years. Its attention to detail in terms of set design and creature effects, combined with a compelling storyline and engaging performances from its cast, make this an absolute must-watch for fans of the genre. So, Tom, are you ready to venture into the dark depths of the Amazonian jungle with us tomorrow and see what horrors Crawling Death has in store?
Oh, no, Timmy. I'm not ready for another trip into the depths of the Amazonian jungle just yet. But you know me, I always appreciate a good horror flick. So let's talk about Tremors 2, Aftershocks and its cast. First off, we have Fred Ward reprising his role as the wisecracking, hard-drinking, ex-hired gun turned reluctant hero, Earl Basset. Now, I gotta say, Ward really brings this character to life with his deadpan delivery and effortless charm. His chemistry with Christopher Garden, who plays his unlikely sidekick, Grady Hoover, is quite entertaining too. They play off each other like a well-oiled, bickering old couple, which adds a nice comedic relief amidst all the chaos. But let's talk about the real standout in this flick, Michael Gross as Burt Gummer. His portrayal of the rough around the edges, straight-talking, gun-totting, explosive happy action hero is simply brilliant. He has a presence that demands attention whenever he's on screen. And his iconic line, "I ain't got time to bleed, I've got too much oil to drill," has become something of a cult classic among fans of the Tremors franchise. Now, let's not forget about the ladies in this film. We have Helen Shaver as Dr. Kate Riley, an equally tough and intelligent geologist who's determined to uncover the truth behind these mysterious Graboid infestations alongside her assistant Julio, played by Luis Guzman. Both actresses bring a much-needed level of scientific credibility to the film while still managing to kick ass when necessary. Overall, Tremors 2, Aftershocks boasts an impressive cast that delivers memorable performances that elevate the mediocre plot and cheap effects. What do you think, Timmy? Did I forget anyone who stood out for you?
Oh, how could I forget about Kate Riley, played by Helen Shaver? She really brought a sense of determination and scientific prowess to the film, always ready to face whatever challenges came her way. And let's not forget about Julio, played brilliantly by Luis Guzman. He brought a much-needed dose of comic relief to the otherwise tense situations the characters found themselves in. The chemistry between him and Kate was palpable, creating an unlikely but entertaining duo that kept me engaged throughout the movie. Now, moving on to the influence Tremors 2. Aftershocks had on other films or TV series, there are quite a few notable examples. One of the most obvious is the popular TV show Earth's Final Weapon, which premiered just 2 years after Tremors 2 hit theaters. While the show focuses more on alien invaders rather than ancient creatures awakening from their slumber, it borrows heavily from the action-packed sequences and humor found in Tremors 2. Another example would be the low-budget horror flick Crawling Death, which I mentioned earlier. Although not a direct ripoff, there are some similarities between the plot of Crawling Death and that of Tremors 2. Aftershocks. Both films revolve around a group of unlikely heroes banding together to stop a horde of monstrous creatures from taking over the world, or in this case, the Amazonian jungle. So, Tom, what do you think about Tremors 2? Aftershocks' influence on other films and TV shows?
Well, Timmy, as much as I hate to admit it, Tremors 2, Aftershocks did manage to deliver on some fronts. The cast is top-notch, with each actor bringing their best to their respective roles. Fred Ward and Michael Gross have a natural chemistry that translates well onto the screen, while Helen Shaver and Christopher Garden provide much-needed credibility to the film's plot. The humor, although at times predictable, manages to land some solid laughs, thanks to the banter between Earl and Grady. However, the story itself is nothing new. It follows the tried-and-true formula of a ragtag group of misfits banding together to save the day. And while the action sequences are entertaining, they're also plagued by mediocre effects and cheap-looking CG. But hey, we're talking about a direct-to-video sequel here, so I guess one can't expect much more. Overall, Tremors 2, Aftershocks, is an entertaining enough watch for fans of the genre who are looking for some light-hearted, mindless fun. But if you're expecting a masterpiece that redefines the horror genre, then you'll be left disappointed. So, Timmy, in conclusion, Tremors 2, Aftershocks is an enjoyable sequel that capitalizes on its charismatic cast and occasional moments of humor to distract from its formulaic plot and mediocre effects. It's far from perfect, but it delivers exactly what you signed up for: action-packed chaos and laughter along the way. So if you're in the mood for some mindless entertainment, give Tremors 2, Aftershocks a shot, and don't forget to share your thoughts with us in the comments section below. And remember, folks, stay tuned for our next exciting episode where we delve deep into the depths of the Amazonian jungle and face off against some nasty crawling creatures. Until then, please like, subscribe, and share this video with your friends and family members who enjoy a good laugh and even better action sequences.